In the summer of 1518, a bizarre event unfolded in the city of Strasbourg, then part of the Holy Roman Empire. It began with a single woman, identified in historical records as Frau Trophia, who stepped into the street and started dancing. There was no music playing, but she continued to dance energetically for days without stopping. Within a week, more than 30 other people had joined her, dancing day and night without rest. By the end of the month, the number had grown to about 400 dancers. What makes this event so mysterious is that the dancing wasn't voluntary. These people weren't celebrating or enjoying themselves, they were suffering. According to multiple historical accounts from city officials, physicians, and chroniclers of the time, the afflicted dancers couldn't stop. They danced until they were exhausted, their feet bloody, and some even danced until they died from heart attacks, strokes, or pure exhaustion. The city's authorities were completely baffled by this strange outbreak. At first, they thought dancing might cure whatever was causing the problem, so they built special stages and even hired musicians to play along with the dancers. They brought in healthy people to keep the afflicted dancing, believing this would somehow help them recover faster. This approach quickly proved disastrous as more people fell victim to the mysterious dancing compulsion. Medical professionals of the time were equally confused. Some doctors believed the dancing was caused by hot blood, following the medical theories of the time. They suggested the cure was to let the dancers work out their excess energy. Others thought it might be caused by poisoning from a plant called wolf spider or ergot, a fungus that can grow on rye grain and cause hallucinations. The city eventually changed its approach and banned music in the city, hoping this would help the dancers stop. They also moved the afflicted to a shrine dedicated to Saint Vitus, a saint believed to have power over such afflictions. The most perplexing aspect of the dancing plague is that it affected hundreds of people simultaneously and lasted for months. It wasn't an isolated incident either. Similar outbreaks had occurred in the same region before, including a major episode in 1374 that affected people across the Rhine Valley. What could cause so many people to dance uncontrollably until they hurt themselves? Why did it spread through the community? And why did it eventually stop as mysteriously as it had begun? The dancing plague of 1518 stands as one of history's most well-documented cases of mass psychogenic illness, yet its exact causes remain debated to this day. The detailed records left by local authorities provide us with compelling evidence that this wasn't simply a religious festival gone wrong or an exaggerated tale. Something truly unusual happened that summer in Strasbourg, affecting hundreds of ordinary citizens who danced without control or rest until their bodies gave out. The dancing plague occurred during a particularly difficult time in European history. Strasbourg and surrounding regions were suffering from severe famine and disease. Crops had failed, food prices were extremely high, and many people were malnourished or starving. Diseases like syphilis, smallpox, and leprosy were common, and the region had recently experienced several outbreaks of the bubonic plague. Daily life was filled with hardship for most people. The Catholic Church dominated society, and beliefs in supernatural forces, divine punishment, and demonic possession were widespread. Many people believed saints could both curse and cure illnesses, with Saint Vitus particularly associated with dancing afflictions. This religious environment shaped how people understood unexplained events like the dancing outbreak. The early 16th century was also a time of social tension. The Protestant Reformation would begin just a year later in 1517, reflecting underlying religious and social conflicts. Common people had little political power and often suffered greatly during times of hardship while the wealthy remained comfortable. These conditions, poverty, hunger, disease, religious fear, and social stress, created an environment where unusual psychological responses might emerge as people struggled to cope with extreme suffering and uncertainty. Several theories have been proposed to explain the dancing plague. Some historians suggest it was a case of mass psychogenic illness, also called mass hysteria, where physical symptoms spread through a population with no biological cause. In this view, extreme psychological stress from famine and disease created a shared psychological reaction that manifested as uncontrollable dancing. Once the first few people began dancing, the behavior spread through social contagion. Others witnessing it became susceptible to the same symptoms. One possibility is that the dancers were suffering from religious ecstasy or a form of ritualistic trance state. Medieval Europeans sometimes engaged in ecstatic dancing as a form of spiritual release. However, contemporary accounts describe the dancers as distressed rather than in religious rapture, suggesting this wasn't a voluntary spiritual practice. Some medical researchers have proposed that the dancers might have consumed grain contaminated with ergot fungus, which produces chemicals similar to LSD that can cause hallucinations, spasms, and psychotic delusions. However, ergot poisoning typically produces muscle contractions rather than coordinated dancing movements and affects individuals rather than spreading in a pattern consistent with mass psychogenic illness. Another theory suggests the phenomenon might have been a form of culturally influenced stress response. The concept of dancing mania or St. Vitus dance was well known in European culture at the time. People under extreme stress might have unconsciously expressed their psychological suffering through this culturally sanctioned form. For some sufferers, the dancing might have provided temporary emotional release from otherwise unbearable conditions. Many historians now believe the most likely explanation involves a combination of these factors: psychological stress, cultural context, and possibly environmental factors working together to create this unusual outbreak. Modern medical understanding suggests that what was called the dancing plague might have been several different conditions grouped together. Some dancers may have suffered from Sydenham's chorea, a neurological disorder causing involuntary movements. Others might have had epilepsy or movement disorders that weren't understood at the time. Recent research has focused on the social and psychological dimensions of the event. Historians and psychologists now recognize that mass psychogenic illness is a real phenomenon where physical symptoms can spread through groups under stress without any biological agent causing them. Similar outbreaks, though not involving dancing, continue to occur today in schools, factories, and communities under stress. Sociologists have drawn parallels between the dancing plague and modern stress responses in traumatized communities. They note how shared cultural beliefs shape the way psychological distress manifests physically, whether as dancing in medieval Europe or different symptoms in contemporary settings. The environmental conditions of extreme hardship, famine, and disease that preceded the dancing plague are now seen as crucial factors that created vulnerability to such an outbreak. While we may never know exactly what caused the dancing plague of 1518, studying it helps us understand the complex relationships between mind and body, individual and community, and how psychological suffering can take surprising physical forms. The dancing plague reminds us that human behavior during times of extreme stress can take unexpected forms shaped by cultural context, and that the mind's influence over the body can be powerful enough to create symptoms that spread through entire communities. In a quiet corner of a university library in the United States, one of the world's most puzzling books rests behind glass. Known as the Voynich Manuscript, this mysterious book has baffled scholars, cryptographers, and linguists for over a century. It's a manuscript filled with strange illustrations of plants that don't resemble anything on Earth, strange circular diagrams, what appear to be zodiac symbols, and lines upon lines of flowing, handwritten text in an unknown script. What makes the manuscript so intriguing is that no one, to this day, has been able to read it. The book itself is named after Wilfred Voynich, a Polish rare book dealer who purchased the manuscript in 1912 from a Jesuit college near Rome. As soon as Voynich laid eyes on the odd pages, he realized he had discovered something very unusual. The writing was unlike any alphabet known at the time, and the pictures raised even more questions. He spent the rest of his life trying to solve its secrets, but like many after him, he was unsuccessful. The manuscript is small and delicate, with about 240 vellum pages, though researchers believe several pages are missing. The text is written in a neat, consistent script, suggesting it was created by a skilled scribe. What stands out most are the illustrations. There are drawings of plants that don't match any known species. There are also pages filled with tiny women bathing in green pools connected by pipes, and astronomical charts that suggest some kind of cosmic or spiritual meaning. Other pages include charts or circular diagrams, which may indicate astrological or alchemical information. Despite its strange contents, the book seems to follow an internal logic. Words repeat in patterns. Certain symbols appear consistently, almost as if they are part of a genuine language or code. But no one has cracked it. For decades, many of the world's best cryptographers, including codebreakers from both world wars, have tried and failed to understand it. Some believe it's an elaborate hoax. Others insist it must hold meaning, crafted with purpose and care. Adding to the mystery is the question of its origin. Radiocarbon dating of the vellum pages has shown that the manuscript was made in the early 1400s, around the time of the Renaissance. That means this book is over 600 years old. Yet, no one knows who wrote it, where it was created, or why. Some pages seem to focus on herbal medicine, others on astronomy, and still others suggest alchemy or magic. The variety of content makes it difficult to pin down a single purpose. Scholars have divided the book into different sections based on the themes of the drawings: the herbal section, the astronomical section, the biological section, the cosmological section, and the pharmaceutical section. Each section is as puzzling as the last. The herbal pages, for example, show plants that are either invented or unidentifiable. The pharmaceutical section includes what appear to be labeled containers, but again, the writing cannot be read. Over the years, countless theories have been proposed. Some say it was the work of a mad alchemist trying to protect his secrets. Others believe it is a coded manual for healing or a spiritual guide. A few even suggest it came from another world or dimension. Despite the range of ideas, one thing is clear: the Voynich Manuscript remains one of the most enduring and captivating mysteries in history. The reason it continues to fascinate people is not just because it's unsolved, but because of how genuine it appears. There is a strange sense of order in the pages, as if someone truly meant to communicate something. The handwriting is smooth and flowing, showing no signs of hesitation. It looks like a real script written by someone fluent in whatever language it is. That authenticity gives weight to the mystery, and to this day, the manuscript continues to spark curiosity and wonder across the world. To better understand the Voynich Manuscript, we need to explore the world during the early 15th century, the time when the manuscript was created. This was a period of great change in Europe. Known as the Renaissance, it marked the beginning of a new way of thinking, one that encouraged art, science, and the study of the natural world. People were becoming curious about the universe, the human body, plants, and how to treat illness. Ancient texts were being rediscovered, translated, and studied. There was a strong interest in topics like astrology, alchemy, and herbal medicine. The manuscript likely came from somewhere in Central Europe, possibly northern Italy or the Holy Roman Empire, where many intellectuals and scholars were active. During this time, secret knowledge was considered powerful. People who studied the stars or worked with herbs often kept their information hidden, sometimes using codes or symbols. Books were not printed yet. They were copied by hand and only a few people owned them. A book filled with unique knowledge, written in a secret script, would have been highly valuable. The Voynich Manuscript fits this world of secret learning. The presence of zodiac symbols, odd plant drawings, and what seems to be medical or alchemical diagrams suggests it might have been created by someone studying nature or seeking deeper knowledge of life. Whether this knowledge was scientific, mystical, or both, we cannot be sure. But the style of the writing and the vellum used in the book align well with materials and methods from the early Renaissance period. Over the years, many theories have been put forward to explain the purpose and origin of the Voynich Manuscript. Some historians suggest it may be a type of herbal medicine book, perhaps made by a healer who wanted to keep their treatments secret. The images of plants and containers, along with the biological-looking drawings, support this idea. Another possibility is that the book was meant for alchemical or mystical purposes. The circular diagrams, astrological symbols, and strange bathing scenes could point to rituals or spiritual teachings. Some suggest the manuscript was used by a secret society or a private group of thinkers. Some believe the manuscript is a hoax, a fake book made to look mysterious on purpose. One theory says it was created by a clever forger to impress or confuse wealthy collectors. The problem with this idea is the amount of effort and detail in the manuscript. It would have taken years of careful work to create something so consistent. The text follows patterns and rules, which suggests it may be a real, though lost, language or code. Others think it might be written in a constructed language, a made-up system designed by one person. Some historians propose that it could be a type of shorthand or symbolic script. One possibility is that it's a kind of mental exercise, like a puzzle created for fun or private reflection. A more unusual theory is that the manuscript was channeled, meaning the author believed they were receiving information from another realm or dimension. This idea ties into the mystical appearance of the drawings and the unknown nature of the writing. While this theory is less scientific, it reflects how people in the past often mixed spiritual belief with natural study. Finally, some researchers think the Voynich Manuscript may contain information written in a lost language or dialect, one that has no surviving examples today. If that's true, then decoding it would be nearly impossible without a translation key. In recent years, technology has helped scholars learn more about the Voynich Manuscript, though the mystery is far from solved. Radiocarbon testing confirmed that the pages date back to the early 1400s. Ink analysis showed that the writing was applied soon after the parchment was made, supporting the idea that the manuscript is not a modern fake. High-resolution scans have allowed researchers all over the world to study the pages in detail. Linguists have tried to analyze the text structure using computers, looking for repeating patterns. Some findings suggest that the writing follows linguistic rules similar to natural languages. This strengthens the belief that the text may be meaningful. In 2017, a scholar named Nicholas Gibbs claimed he had solved the mystery, suggesting the text was a form of Latin shorthand used in medical texts. However, this theory was quickly dismissed by experts, who found little evidence to support it. Artificial intelligence has also been used to compare the Voynich script with known languages. One study suggested a similarity with Hebrew, but again, no full translation has ever been confirmed. Part of the challenge is that we don't know the rules of the script or how the words are supposed to sound. Today, the manuscript is kept at Yale University's Beinecke Rare Book Library. It has been fully digitized and is available online for anyone to explore. This has helped keep interest in the manuscript alive, with both professionals and amateurs continuing to study its secrets. While we may still be far from unlocking the full meaning of the Voynich Manuscript, modern tools have brought us closer than ever before. Whether it's a lost language, a forgotten code, or a beautiful artistic creation, the manuscript remains a powerful reminder of how much mystery still lies hidden in history. The tale of the lost treasure of the Knights Templar is one of the most enduring legends from the Middle Ages. The Knights Templar were a powerful and wealthy military order founded in the early 12th century. They were originally established to protect Christian pilgrims traveling to the Holy Land during the Crusades. Over time, they became much more than warriors. They grew into a financial powerhouse, owning land, castles, and banks across Europe. With this rise in power came enormous wealth. The Templars collected donations from kings and nobles, managed valuable properties, and created one of the earliest banking systems. Some records suggest they stored gold, religious relics, and important documents in secure locations, especially in their strongholds and commanderies. But everything changed in the early 14th century. On Friday, October 13, 1307, King Philip IV of France, who was deeply in debt to the Templars, ordered the sudden arrest of all Templar knights in France. Many were tortured into giving false confessions, and the order was officially disbanded by the Pope a few years later. Their leader, Jacques de Molay, was burned at the stake in 1314. The mystery begins here. When the arrests happened, the king expected to find vast amounts of treasure in Templar properties, but most of it was gone. No gold, no sacred relics, and no secret documents. It appeared the Templars had moved or hidden their riches before the raids began. But where did it go? Legends say that Templar knights secretly transported their treasure to hidden locations. Some believe it was moved to Scotland, where the order found refuge. Others suggest it was buried beneath churches, castles, or even in remote caves. A few stories claim the treasure made its way to the New World, long before Columbus arrived. The idea of a hidden hoard filled with gold, religious artifacts, and ancient knowledge continues to capture the imagination of treasure hunters and historians alike. Despite many searches over the centuries, no confirmed Templar treasure has ever been found. The mystery remains unsolved, one of history's most intriguing questions. What happened to the lost treasure of the Knights Templar? The Knights Templar were founded in 1119 during the period of the Crusades. This was a time when European Christian armies were traveling to the Middle East to reclaim holy sites. The Templars were both monks and warriors, following strict religious vows while also fighting in battle. Over time, the order grew extremely influential. They received donations from nobles and kings, built fortresses, and established a trusted financial network. By the 13th century, the Templars had become one of the most powerful organizations in Europe. However, their success led to enemies. King Philip IV of France, facing financial troubles, saw the Templars as a threat and a source of money. In 1307, he acted swiftly to arrest the Templars and seize their assets. The Pope, under pressure, dissolved the order in 1312. The sudden collapse of such a vast and wealthy organization created the perfect setting for a mystery. The historical events are real, but the fate of their rumored treasure has never been fully explained. There are several ideas about what may have happened to the Templar treasure. One possibility is that the Templars anticipated their downfall and secretly moved their wealth to safe places. Some historians suggest that Templar ships left from ports like La Rochelle in France, carrying treasure to unknown destinations. Supporters of this theory believe the Templars had time to hide their assets before the king's men arrived. Another theory points to Scotland. After the Templars were disbanded, some knights may have fled there. Scotland was outside the control of the French king and the Pope at that time, and legends speak of hidden relics and secret alliances with Scottish clans. Some even connect the Templars to Rosslyn Chapel, a 15th-century church filled with mysterious carvings. There are also claims that the treasure was buried in secret vaults under Templar castles or churches, possibly in areas like Portugal or Spain, where the order had strong roots. A more speculative theory suggests that the Templars traveled across the ocean and hid their treasure in the Americas long before Columbus's voyage. Still, some scholars believe the treasure never existed in the form described by legends. They propose that it was made up of land holdings, documents, and money that were quietly absorbed by other groups after the Templars were disbanded. Today, the mystery of the Templar treasure continues to inspire books, documentaries, and even television series. Modern historians agree that the Knights Templar were wealthy and influential, but there is less agreement on whether a physical treasure was ever hidden. Archaeological studies have explored former Templar sites, especially in France, Portugal, and Scotland. Some researchers have uncovered coins, artifacts, and manuscripts, but none have been proven to be part of a legendary treasure. Modern technology, such as ground-penetrating radar and digital mapping, has helped explore old Templar properties, but no major discoveries have yet confirmed the tales. In popular culture, the idea of a lost Templar hoard has grown larger than life. Stories connected to the Holy Grail, the Ark of the Covenant, and secret knowledge passed down through the centuries. While these ideas remain unproven, they reflect a deep human fascination with the unknown. Most scholars now view the treasure as part of a symbolic mystery, an example of how real history blends with legend. The true riches of the Templars may not be gold, but the lasting intrigue their story creates in our imagination. In the early 1930s, during an excavation near Baghdad, Iraq, a group of workers uncovered a curious artifact that would soon spark decades of intrigue. The object, now famously known as the Baghdad Battery, appeared at first to be an ordinary clay jar. However, inside this jar was a copper cylinder, and within the cylinder, an iron rod. The components were sealed with bitumen, a tar-like substance. When examined closely, the structure of the jar seemed oddly familiar, remarkably similar to that of a modern galvanic cell, or what we commonly call a battery. The artifact was dated to roughly 250 BCE to 250 CE, during the Parthian or Sassanid periods of ancient Mesopotamia. The idea that such a sophisticated device could have existed nearly 2 millennia before the formal discovery of electricity was both astonishing and baffling. Scholars, scientists, and enthusiasts began asking the same question: what was it used for? Was it a tool of some forgotten science? A ceremonial object? Or perhaps an accidental arrangement of parts that only appears electrical in nature to modern eyes? The mystery grew as more examples of similar jars were found in the region, and while none of them came with written explanations, they all shared comparable designs. Speculation intensified in the 20th century when scientists demonstrated that, if the jar were filled with an acidic liquid like vinegar or lemon juice, it could indeed produce a small electrical current. This raised even more questions. If ancient people had somehow harnessed electricity, what were they using it for? Electroplating metals? Healing rituals? Or something else entirely? The Baghdad Battery has never been found in a context that clearly explains its use. It was not discovered in a laboratory or workshop, but rather among other items in a ruin that gave little indication of high technology. And yet, its physical design continues to provoke curiosity and wonder. Could this be a relic of an ancient and forgotten knowledge, or is its electrical potential simply a modern misinterpretation? The region where the Baghdad Battery was discovered was once part of ancient Mesopotamia, often considered the cradle of civilization. By the time this artifact is believed to have been made, the area was under the rule of the Parthians and later the Sassanids, both powerful empires known for their advancements in engineering, medicine, and art. The Parthian period, 247 BCE, 224 CE, saw a blend of Hellenistic and Persian influences, while the Sassanid Empire, 224 to 651 CE, contributed significantly to science, architecture, and administration. However, there is no known documentation from either period that describes the use of electricity or anything resembling electrical science. Most tools and technologies of the time were mechanical or based on natural materials like fire and water. As such, the idea that people from this era could have developed a functioning battery stands apart from the known body of ancient technological achievements. This contrast between the simplicity of the time and the complexity of the artifact adds to the mystery and fascination surrounding the Baghdad Battery. Several theories have emerged to explain what the Baghdad Battery might have been. One possibility is that it was used for electroplating, a process that uses electrical current to coat a metal object with a thin layer of another metal. Some proponents point to artifacts that appear to have unusually fine metal finishes and suggest that electricity might have been involved. However, no direct evidence of electroplating workshops or related tools from that period has been found in the region. Another idea is that the jars were used for religious or healing purposes. Some historians suggest that a small electrical shock might have been perceived as mystical or divine, potentially used in rituals or medicine. In this theory, the battery effect was not fully understood but was seen as a spiritual force. There's also the possibility that the design of the artifact is coincidental, and that the components had non-electrical functions. The jar, copper tube, and iron rod might have been part of a simple storage device, or perhaps used in scroll preservation, and it is only modern assumptions that have reinterpreted them through the lens of electricity. Skeptics argue that no textual or archaeological evidence clearly supports the use of electricity in antiquity, and that the battery interpretation might be a case of modern projection onto ancient technology. Still, the debate remains open. In recent years, scholars have continued to study the Baghdad Battery with both scientific curiosity and historical caution. Experiments conducted in modern laboratories have shown that the battery can produce about 0.5 to 1 volt of electricity when filled with a mild acid. This is enough to power a small device or cause a mild tingle when touched. However, modern historians emphasize the lack of contextual evidence. The artifact has not been found alongside tools, wires, or descriptions that clearly indicate a technological use. Most experts now believe that while the object can function as a battery, that does not necessarily mean it was a battery in its original time. Today, the Baghdad Battery serves more as a reminder of the gaps in our understanding of ancient cultures. It reflects how easily modern minds can impose contemporary ideas onto historical artifacts. Whether it was an accidental design or a glimpse into a forgotten science, the Baghdad Battery continues to intrigue scientists, historians, and curious minds around the world, inviting us to look deeper into the layers of human history. The Amber Room was once called the eighth wonder of the world, a dazzling masterpiece made entirely from panels of glowing amber, backed with gold leaf and mirrors. It was not just a work of art, it was a symbol of luxury, power, and craftsmanship. Originally constructed in the early 18th century in Prussia, the Amber Room was later gifted to Russia by King Frederick William I of Prussia in 1716 as a gesture of goodwill. It was installed in the Catherine Palace near St. Petersburg, where it became one of the most stunning features of the Russian imperial estate. The room was crafted from over 6 tons of amber, intricately carved and arranged to create glowing mosaics that reflected light in golden tones. Over the years, it was expanded and enhanced by Russian artisans, becoming a treasured national treasure. But in 1941, during World War II, the Nazis invaded the Soviet Union and reached the city of Pushkin, where the Catherine Palace stood. Although curators tried to hide the Amber Room, they ran out of time. The Germans disassembled it and transported it to Königsberg, present-day Kaliningrad, a city then under German control. It was displayed briefly in a museum there. And then it vanished. By the end of the war, Königsberg was heavily bombed and eventually taken by Soviet forces. The city was in ruins. The Amber Room, once documented as being in the museum, was nowhere to be found. Some believe it was destroyed during the air raids. Others think it was hidden by the retreating Nazis in a bunker, a cave, or even sunk in a ship trying to escape the advancing Soviets. Despite decades of searching, no confirmed trace of the original Amber Room has ever been found. Its fate remains one of the great unsolved art mysteries of the modern world, inspiring books, documentaries, and expeditions, all hoping to uncover the truth behind its disappearance. The Amber Room was created during a time of elaborate court culture in Europe. In the early 1700s, royal palaces were filled with art and decoration designed to reflect power and prestige. Amber, a fossilized tree resin prized for its warm beauty, was rare and expensive. Only the richest nobles could afford it in large amounts. The room was first designed by German craftsmen in Prussia and later gifted to Peter the Great of Russia as part of an alliance. It was reassembled and expanded in the Catherine Palace, becoming a symbol of Russia's imperial elegance. World War II changed everything. Nazi Germany launched a massive invasion of the Soviet Union in 1941. Cultural artifacts became targets, and looting was common. The Germans believed many treasures, including the Amber Room, rightfully belonged in Germany. As a result, the Amber Room was taken to Königsberg, a city that would soon be caught in the chaos of war. This turbulent historical setting, marked by destruction, secrecy, and movement, created the perfect conditions for the Amber Room to vanish without a trace. There are several theories about what happened to the Amber Room after it arrived in Königsberg. One possibility is that it was destroyed during the Allied bombing of the city in 1944. Some historians suggest the museum where it was stored caught fire and the delicate amber, being flammable, was completely consumed. However, no direct evidence has confirmed this theory. Another possibility is that the Nazis hid the panels before the Soviets arrived. Some believe the treasure was placed in underground bunkers, salt mines, or secret vaults in the mountains. A few theories point to the possibility that it was loaded onto a ship, possibly the Wilhelm Gustloff or Karlsruhe, and sunk during the final days of the war. These ships were among many that sank in the Baltic Sea while fleeing Soviet forces. There have also been rumors over the years that pieces of the Amber Room resurfaced in private collections. In 1997, one small mosaic panel believed to be from the original room was found in Germany, adding weight to the theory that at least part of it survived. Despite many searches, none of the hiding places have produced the full Amber Room. Theories continue, but the fate of the treasure remains unknown. Today, the mystery of the Amber Room continues to fascinate historians, treasure hunters, and art lovers. In the 2000s, after years of work by Russian and German artisans, a full-scale replica of the Amber Room was completed and installed in the Catherine Palace. It stands as a tribute to the lost original and allows visitors to glimpse what once was. Modern technology has been used to search for the lost panels, including radar scans of underground bunkers and dives into sunken shipwrecks. Occasionally, discoveries spark excitement, but so far, none have led to the full recovery of the original room. Most experts agree that unless more definitive evidence is uncovered, such as documents, hidden crates, or identifiable panels, the fate of the Amber Room will remain a mystery. Some believe it may still lie hidden somewhere, waiting to be found. Others think it was lost forever during the chaos of war. What remains certain is the legacy of the Amber Room. Its story continues to inspire hope, curiosity, and a deep appreciation for the fragile beauty of art and the many secrets history still holds. The Hanging Gardens of Babylon remain one of history's greatest mysteries. Despite being named as one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world, we have yet to find clear proof they actually existed. Ancient writers described them as beautiful terraced gardens that seemed to float in the air above the city of Babylon, creating a green mountain in an otherwise flat landscape. According to these accounts, the gardens covered an area of about 400 feet square and rose as high as a modern 7-story building. They featured an impressive watering system that carried water from the nearby Euphrates River up to plants growing at different heights. The builders reportedly used layers of reeds, tar, and lead sheets between the stone terraces to prevent water from leaking through and damaging the structure below. Hollow stone columns supposedly contained pipes or screws that moved water upward against gravity, a remarkable achievement for ancient times. The story behind the gardens is just as fascinating as their design. King Nebuchadnezzar II of Babylon supposedly built them around 600 BCE as a gift for his wife, Queen Amytis. The queen came from Media, a mountainous region, in today's Iran, and felt homesick for the greenery of her homeland while living in the flat, dry plains of Babylon. To make her happy, Nebuchadnezzar created this artificial paradise filled with plants from distant lands to remind her of home. What makes the gardens particularly mysterious is that no Babylonian writing mentions them. While we have many clay tablets describing Nebuchadnezzar's other building projects, like temples, walls, and palaces, none talk about these magnificent gardens. The earliest descriptions come from Greek writers who lived hundreds of years after the gardens would have existed. These Greek accounts are detailed but second-hand, raising questions about whether they were describing a real place or repeating a popular story. Adding to the mystery, archaeologists have searched extensively at the ruins of ancient Babylon and modern-day Iraq, but haven't found clear evidence of the gardens. Unlike other ancient wonders like the Great Pyramid or the Parthenon, we don't know exactly where the Hanging Gardens stood, or if they stood at all. This lack of physical evidence has led some experts to wonder if the gardens were simply a beautiful myth, an imagined paradise rather than an actual historical site. The mystery deepens when we consider that creating such gardens would have required advanced engineering knowledge to waterproof the structure and lift water to such heights. If they existed, the Hanging Gardens would truly represent one of humanity's great early engineering achievements, combining technical skill with artistic vision to create something both beautiful and seemingly impossible. The Hanging Gardens would have been built during the Neo-Babylonian Empire, 626 to 539 BCE, when Babylon was at its peak of power and wealth. King Nebuchadnezzar II ruled for 43 years and transformed Babylon into one of the ancient world's most impressive cities. He built massive walls, beautiful temples, and the famous blue Ishtar Gate decorated with animals made from glazed bricks. The location of Babylon, between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers in what is now Iraq, gave its people extensive knowledge of water management. They had already developed systems of canals, dams, and irrigation to control flooding and water their crops. This expertise would have made the garden's advanced watering system possible. Political marriages between royal families were common during this time. Queens often came from distant lands to strengthen alliances between kingdoms. Creating a garden to remind Queen Amytis of her mountainous homeland would have been both a loving gesture and a display of Babylon's power and technical skill. The gardens would have showcased exotic plants from throughout the empire, demonstrating the king's far-reaching influence. Babylon was also a center of learning, with knowledge of mathematics, astronomy, and engineering. This intellectual environment would have provided the expertise needed to design and build such an ambitious structure. Several explanations have been proposed to solve the mystery of the Hanging Gardens. Some historians suggest that the gardens did exist but were not actually in Babylon. Dr. Stephanie Daly from Oxford University believes they were built in the city of Nineveh by the Assyrian king Sennacherib, about 300 miles north of Babylon. Archaeological findings at Nineveh include an advanced aqueduct system and stone carvings showing lush gardens. According to this theory, Greek writers might have confused the two cities or deliberately attributed the famous gardens to the better-known city of Babylon. One possibility is that the gardens existed in Babylon, but we haven't found them because they were built on rooftops of the palace complex, or because their remains have been destroyed by rising groundwater and erosion over the centuries. The water table in the region has risen significantly, potentially washing away evidence of the garden's foundations. Some scholars propose that the Hanging Gardens represent a combination of various Mesopotamian royal gardens rather than a single specific place. In this view, Greek historians might have combined stories about different gardens into one legendary wonder. The absence of the gardens from Babylonian records could be explained if they were considered just a normal part of palace life, not worth special mention. Another theory suggests that the gardens were entirely fictional, a Greek creation meant to represent the exotic luxury of Eastern kingdoms. In this interpretation, the gardens symbolize humanity's control over nature and serve as a literary device rather than a historical reality. In recent years, archaeologists have found some intriguing clues that might support the existence of the gardens. Excavations at the northeast corner of Babylon's southern palace uncovered unusual structures that could have supported terraced gardens. Nearby, they found a vaulted building with thick walls and a well, possibly part of a water system for elevated plantings. New technologies are helping the search without requiring extensive digging. Satellite imagery, ground-penetrating radar, and computer modeling allow researchers to look for buried structures and test theories about how the gardens might have worked. These methods are especially important in Iraq, where political instability has limited archaeological work in recent decades. Some researchers now believe the gardens might have been more practical than magical. Rather than floating in air, they likely consisted of plants growing on a series of stone terraces supported by columns and arches. The hanging description might refer to plants spilling over the edges of these terraces, creating the illusion they were suspended in air. Whether the gardens existed or not, their story continues to inspire. Modern green architecture and rooftop gardens draw on the same principles. The concept of creating green spaces in urban environments remains as relevant today as it was in ancient times, showing how this ancient wonder, real or imagined, continues to influence our modern world. In 1901, sponge divers exploring a shipwreck off the coast of the Greek island of Antikythera made a surprising discovery. Among the statues and artifacts from the wreck, which dated back to around 60 BCE, they found a small, heavily corroded bronze object with complex gears and inscriptions. It looked more like a piece of machinery than anything from the ancient world. Over time, as scholars began to clean and study it, they realized they had uncovered something extraordinary, a mysterious ancient device now known as the Antikythera Mechanism. What made this find so fascinating was its complexity. The mechanism appeared to be a type of ancient analog computer, designed with at least 30 bronze gears enclosed in a wooden frame. Though broken into several pieces, researchers could see that it once formed a working machine that tracked astronomical cycles. Dials, inscriptions, and gear teeth suggested it could predict the movements of the sun and moon, the phases of the moon, eclipses, and possibly even the positions of planets. The level of sophistication found in the Antikythera mechanism stunned historians. For many years, it was assumed that mechanical technology of such precision did not exist until at least 1,000 years later during the medieval period. Yet this device, made more than 2,000 years ago, showed detailed knowledge of astronomy and mechanical engineering that rivaled much later achievements. Who built it, and for what exact purpose? How did the knowledge to create such a machine appear in ancient Greece, and why did it seem to vanish afterward? These questions lie at the heart of the mystery. The Antikythera mechanism challenges our assumptions about ancient knowledge and technology, offering a rare and puzzling glimpse into the ingenuity of the past. The Antikythera mechanism dates back to the Hellenistic period of ancient Greece, a time marked by great achievements in science, mathematics, and engineering. This era followed the conquests of Alexander the Great and was known for the blending of Greek culture with ideas from Egypt, Persia, and other parts of the ancient world. In places like Alexandria, scholars studied astronomy, geometry, and mechanics. Figures such as Archimedes and Hipparchus made important discoveries about the heavens and mechanical systems. The mechanism itself is believed to have been built around the 2nd or 1st century BCE, possibly in Rhodes or another center of Greek learning. Despite the scientific brilliance of the period, most ancient devices were simple tools. The Antikythera Mechanism stands apart for its complexity. Its existence suggests that ancient Greeks had access to much more advanced technology than previously thought, but very few other examples have survived, making this discovery all the more remarkable. The purpose of the Antikythera Mechanism has been the subject of much study and debate. One widely accepted theory is that it was an astronomical calculator. Some historians suggest it was used to predict celestial events, such as eclipses and planetary positions, based on intricate gearwork that mimicked the movements of the Sun, Moon, and perhaps the 5 known planets. Another possibility is that it served as an educational tool or a demonstration device, used by philosophers or scholars to teach about the heavens. The dials and inscriptions may have helped explain how celestial cycles worked, especially in relation to the Greek calendar and significant festivals. There is also a theory that connects the device to navigation. While it may not have been a direct tool for sailing, understanding astronomical patterns would have been valuable for sailors and traders during long sea journeys. Some even propose it was a prized possession of a wealthy patron or noble, showcasing their interest in science and learning. The question of why similar devices haven't been found has led to speculation. One possibility is that other machines like it existed but were lost or melted down. Some historians suggest that this kind of technology was not widespread and may have been known only to a small group of elite craftsmen and scholars. Thanks to advanced imaging techniques like X-ray tomography and 3D scanning, researchers have been able to peer inside the corroded fragments of the Antikythera Mechanism without damaging it. These studies revealed the full complexity of the gears and allowed experts to reconstruct how the device may have worked. Scholars now believe it could display a 19-year metonic cycle, track lunar phases, predict eclipses using the 223-month Saros cycle, and possibly even model the irregular motion of the moon. Some reconstructions show it included a front dial with a zodiac scale and pointers for planetary motion. Modern researchers see the Antikythera Mechanism as evidence that ancient science was far more advanced than once believed. It has reshaped our understanding of what ancient civilizations were capable of, revealing a lost tradition of precise mechanical engineering. Today, replicas of the mechanism are displayed in museums, and its legacy continues to inspire scientists, engineers, and historians. The device serves not only as a fascinating puzzle but also as a bridge between the ancient and modern worlds, reminding us that curiosity and innovation are timeless human traits. The story of the lost city of Atlantis begins with a tale told more than 2,000 years ago. The philosopher Plato, writing in the 4th century BCE, described a powerful and advanced civilization that supposedly existed about 9,000 years before his time. According to him, Atlantis was a great island nation beyond the Pillars of Hercules, a location many believe refers to the Strait of Gibraltar. In his writings, Plato described Atlantis as a land of wealth and technological advancement, blessed with abundant natural resources, majestic architecture, and a well-organized society. The Atlanteans, he said, had once been virtuous people who lived in harmony. But over time, they became greedy and power-hungry. Their ambition led them to attempt conquest beyond their own lands. As punishment for their arrogance, the gods struck down Atlantis with a terrible disaster. In a single day and night of misfortune, Plato wrote, the entire island sank into the ocean and was lost forever. This story has captured the imagination of people for centuries. What makes it so mysterious is that Plato's account is the only primary source. No other ancient text mentions Atlantis. Was it a real place, or was it a fictional allegory created by Plato to teach a moral lesson? The mystery deepens when people point to unusual underwater structures, ancient maps, or strange geological formations and claim they are remnants of Atlantis. Throughout history, explorers and scholars have searched the oceans, deserts, and even Antarctica for clues. Some believe Atlantis lies beneath the waters of the Mediterranean or the Atlantic. Others think the legend may refer to a memory of a natural disaster like a tsunami or volcanic eruption that destroyed an ancient civilization. Despite centuries of searching, Atlantis has never been found, and no evidence has proven it ever truly existed. Yet the mystery remains one of the most famous in history. The very idea that a whole civilization could disappear so completely continues to inspire books, films, and theories. Atlantis is not just a lost city, it's a symbol of human curiosity and the enduring appeal of the unknown. Plato introduced the story of Atlantis in two of his works, Timaeus and Critias, written around 360 BCE. At the time, ancient Greece was a place of philosophical discussion, artistic expression, and political change. Plato was a student of Socrates and the teacher of Aristotle, and he often used stories to communicate deeper ideas about ethics, society, and the human condition. The Greece of Plato's time was recovering from wars and was thinking deeply about power, justice, and ideal societies. His story of Atlantis was likely influenced by real historical events, such as the destruction of the island of Thera, now Santorini, by a volcanic eruption centuries earlier. That event caused widespread damage in the region and could have served as a model for the sudden destruction in his tale. Many scholars believe Plato used Atlantis as a cautionary tale, a fictional society that lost its way due to pride and greed. In this way, Atlantis wasn't just a story about a lost city, but a reflection on human nature and the dangers of moral decline. The mystery of Atlantis has given rise to many theories, some more grounded than others. One possibility is that Plato invented the story entirely as an allegory, never intending it to be taken literally. According to this view, Atlantis was a tool for philosophical teaching rather than a historical account. However, some historians suggest that Plato's story may have been based on vague memories or second-hand reports of real events, such as the eruption of Thera or a forgotten civilization that once thrived in the Mediterranean. The sudden destruction of the Minoan civilization on Crete, which was highly advanced for its time and fell after a series of natural disasters, is sometimes cited as a possible inspiration. Others have proposed that Atlantis was located in the Atlantic Ocean, as Plato described. One theory points to the Azores Islands, while another even places Atlantis under Antarctica, based on shifting continental plates and lost maps. More speculative theories suggest that Atlantis could have been an alien civilization or a society with advanced technology lost to time. Despite these many ideas, no widely accepted evidence has ever been found. Each theory adds a new layer to the mystery, but none can fully explain what Plato meant or whether Atlantis was ever real. In modern times, the story of Atlantis continues to spark interest, especially among archaeologists, geologists, and historians. While no definitive proof has emerged, ongoing scientific research has helped us better understand the events that may have inspired the myth. For example, the eruption of Thera around 1600 BCE has been studied extensively. It was one of the largest volcanic eruptions in history and caused massive tsunamis and regional devastation. Some researchers believe this could explain the idea of a great civilization suddenly vanishing. Others explore ancient texts and underwater ruins, searching for new clues. Technologies like satellite imaging and ocean floor mapping have revealed many submerged structures, but none have been confirmed as Atlantis. Today, most scholars view Atlantis as a myth, possibly rooted in real events but shaped by imagination and storytelling. However, its legacy continues in popular culture, from novels and documentaries to video games and films. Atlantis reminds us of the power of storytelling, and of the human desire to seek what is hidden and to imagine what might have been. Whether real or imagined, the lost city lives on in our collective curiosity. In the arid desert plains of southern Peru lies one of the most puzzling and awe-inspiring mysteries of the ancient world, the Nazca Lines. Sprawling across nearly 200 square miles of dry landscape, these enormous geoglyphs, figures carved into the ground, have captured the curiosity of explorers, scientists, and visitors for over a century. First spotted from the air in the 20th century, the lines form giant images of animals, plants, geometric shapes, and long, straight lines that stretch for miles across the desert floor. What makes the Nazca Lines so mysterious is both their size and precision. Some of the figures are over 1,000 feet long, so large that they can only be fully seen from the sky. There are images of a hummingbird with perfect symmetry, a monkey with a coiled tail, a spider, a whale, and even what appears to be a human-like figure often called the astronaut. Alongside these are hundreds of straight lines and trapezoid-shaped pathways that run across hills and valleys without any clear physical purpose. These massive designs were created by removing the dark top layer of rocks and exposing the lighter soil underneath, a technique that, surprisingly, has allowed the figures to remain visible for over 1,000 years thanks to the dry, windless climate of the region. The sheer scale and accuracy raise many questions. How were ancient people, without access to aerial views, able to design such large and perfectly proportioned images? The Nazca Lines remain one of archaeology's most enduring mysteries. Their purpose, whether religious, astronomical, or practical, is still debated. What is clear is that the people who made them put great effort and care into their creation, leaving behind a message in the land that still speaks to us today, even if we do not yet fully understand its meaning. The Nazca lines were created by the Nazca civilization, which flourished in southern Peru between 200 BCE and 600 CE. This was a time when the region's people developed complex societies based on agriculture, using advanced irrigation techniques to survive in the desert environment. Despite having no written language, the Nazca were skilled artists and engineers, as seen in their pottery, textiles, and massive earthworks. The region's dry, stable climate helped preserve many archaeological features, including the lines themselves. Religious practices were central to Nazca life, and many scholars believe their rituals focused on pleasing deities associated with water and fertility, critical themes in such a dry landscape. The Nazca lines likely held spiritual or cultural importance for the people who created them. Whether they were part of ceremonial paths, offerings to gods, or a way to connect with the divine, the lines reveal the deep connection between the Nazca and their land. They also reflect a society capable of organizing large-scale, precise projects long before modern tools existed. There are several theories about the purpose of the Nazca lines, though no single explanation has been universally accepted. One possibility is that the lines were part of religious ceremonies, designed to be walked along as sacred paths or processional routes. Some historians suggest that the geoglyphs were offerings to gods, especially deities linked to water and fertility, which were essential for survival in such a dry region. Another theory focuses on astronomy. Some researchers believe that the lines may align with celestial bodies or mark important solar and lunar events, such as solstices. According to this view, the figures and shapes may have been part of an ancient calendar or a tool for understanding the stars. One possibility is that the lines symbolized a map of underground water sources or were related to irrigation, pointing toward natural springs or aquifers. This would explain their connection to survival in the desert. More speculative ideas have also been proposed. Some believe the lines were created to be seen by gods from above, or even suggest, without strong evidence, that they were made by or for ancient visitors from other worlds. While these more imaginative theories attract attention, the majority of scholars focus on cultural, religious, and environmental explanations that reflect the Nazca people's connection to their land and sky. In recent years, technological advances have helped researchers study the Nazca lines more closely. High-resolution satellite imagery, drones, and ground surveys have revealed previously unknown figures, expanding the catalog to over 1,000 geoglyphs. Some of these newer discoveries are much smaller and fainter than the famous ones, and their recognition has been possible only with modern tools. Archaeologists now have a clearer sense of how the lines were made and maintained. Studies show that the Nazca carefully planned the designs, possibly using scaled drawings and simple surveying tools. The use of stakes and cords suggests a deep understanding of geometry and coordination. Modern scholars tend to view the lines as part of a broader religious and cultural landscape. Rather than serving a single purpose, they may have had multiple roles: spiritual, practical, and ceremonial. Today, The Nazca lines are a UNESCO World Heritage Site and are protected as part of Peru's cultural heritage. Ongoing research continues to shed light on their creation and significance. While the full meaning of the lines may never be completely known, they continue to inspire wonder and curiosity, connecting us to a people who used the earth itself as their canvas. In the late 16th century, an ambitious attempt to establish the first English colony in the New World led to one of history's most puzzling disappearances. Known as the Lost Colony of Roanoke, this mysterious event took place on Roanoke Island, located off the coast of present-day North Carolina. The colony was meant to be a permanent English settlement, backed by Sir Walter Raleigh and approved by Queen Elizabeth I. But what began with hope and promise ended with silence and mystery. In 1587, around 115 settlers, men, women, and children, arrived at Roanoke under the leadership of John White. Among them was White's daughter, Eleanor Dare, who soon gave birth to Virginia Dare, the first English child born in America. The settlers faced immediate difficulties, including tensions with local Native American tribes and a shortage of supplies. That same year, White returned to England to gather resources, promising to return as soon as possible. However, his return was delayed by the outbreak of war between England and Spain. 3 years passed before White could finally come back in 1590. When he arrived at Roanoke Island, he found the settlement completely abandoned. The houses were dismantled rather than destroyed, and there were no signs of battle or struggle. The only clue left behind was the word Croton carved into a post, and the letters CRO etched into a nearby tree. The colonists had vanished without a trace. There were no graves, no signs of illness, and no bodies. White believed they may have relocated to nearby Croton Island, now Hatteras Island, but due to bad weather and dangerous sailing conditions, he was never able to search further. Since then, the fate of the Roanoke colonists has remained a mystery. The story has inspired endless speculation and has become one of America's oldest and most enduring historical puzzles. The Roanoke colony was founded during a time of intense European exploration and competition. England was eager to establish a foothold in the Americas to compete with Spain, which had already gained great wealth from its colonies. Sir Walter Raleigh was granted permission by Queen Elizabeth I to establish a settlement in the New World, and Roanoke Island was chosen for its strategic location. At the time, England lacked experience in overseas colonization. The early settlers faced harsh conditions, unfamiliar environments, and sometimes hostile relations with Native American tribes. Supplies had to come from across the Atlantic, which made the colony especially vulnerable. The Spanish Armada's attack on England in 1588 delayed John White's return to Roanoke. By the time he could make the journey, the settlement had been deserted for years. In that era, communication was slow and uncertain, and records were often incomplete, making the disappearance even harder to investigate. This fragile beginning of English colonization highlights the challenges of survival in a new world, and the mystery of Roanoke reflects the uncertainty that shaped much of early colonial history. Over the centuries, many theories have been proposed about what happened to the Roanoke colonists. One possibility is that they integrated with nearby Native American tribes. Some historians suggest they may have moved to Croton Island and joined the friendly Croatan people, adopting their customs and way of life. This would explain the Croton carving found at the abandoned site. Another theory is that the settlers tried to sail back to England or to another nearby location, but perished at sea. Some believe that they may have moved inland in search of better resources and safety but were ultimately lost or killed due to disease, conflict, or starvation. There are also more speculative ideas. One possibility is that they were victims of an attack by hostile tribes or even Spanish forces operating in the area. Though no physical evidence supports this, it remains within the realm of possibility. In the 17th century, later settlers reported seeing Native Americans with gray eyes and speaking English words, leading to further speculation that the Roanoke colonists were absorbed into indigenous communities. However, no definitive proof has ever been found. Despite ongoing research, the exact fate of the colony is still unknown. The mystery remains open, inviting further exploration and interpretation. In recent years, researchers have used archaeology, satellite imaging, and DNA analysis to investigate the Roanoke mystery more deeply. Excavations on Hatteras Island have uncovered European artifacts, including a hilt of a sword, a slate tablet, and copper rings, which may suggest contact between the colonists and local tribes. These findings support the theory that some settlers could have relocated and lived among the Native Americans. Another site on the mainland, known as Site X, has also produced evidence of English activity that could be linked to the Roanoke colonists. Researchers believe some settlers may have split into smaller groups, dispersing to different areas for survival. While no single discovery has solved the mystery, modern approaches have offered new clues and opened fresh lines of inquiry. The lost colony of Roanoke continues to captivate historians and the public alike, not only because of its unanswered questions but also because it symbolizes the risks and hopes of early exploration. Today, Roanoke Island is a site of historical reflection, where the mystery serves as a powerful reminder of how much we still have to learn about our past. In the annals of ancient Rome, few tales are as intriguing as that of the lost Roman legion, often believed to be Legio IX Hispana, or the Ninth Legion. This legion had a proud and fearsome reputation, having fought in many of Rome's early conquests. But somewhere in the mists of history, it seems to vanish. After being stationed in Britain during the early part of the 2nd century, records of the 9th suddenly end, and its fate becomes one of the most enduring mysteries of Roman military history. The last clear mention of the 9th Legion in Roman records places it in Britain around 108 CE, building fortifications in the north. Some scholars believe it may have been involved in defending Roman interests against increasingly hostile native tribes, possibly the Caledonians or Picts, who were known for their resistance to Roman rule. After that point, there is no official account of where the legion went or what happened to it. What makes the disappearance particularly fascinating is that Roman legions were rarely lost without record. When a legion was destroyed or disbanded, its fate was usually recorded in detail. The 9th, however, simply stops appearing in the official documentation. This silence has given rise to theories, speculation, and even fiction, like the novel The Eagle of the Ninth, which helped popularize the story. Archaeological digs have uncovered various fragments of evidence, such as inscriptions and tiles bearing the legion's name, but none offer conclusive proof of their final movements. Did they perish in battle in Britain? Were they transferred and lost elsewhere? Or did they quietly dissolve, forgotten by time? These questions continue to captivate historians and history enthusiasts alike. The Roman Empire at the time of the Ninth Legion's disappearance was at its height. Emperor Trajan ruled a vast domain stretching from Britain in the west to Mesopotamia in the east. The empire relied heavily on its legions to maintain control over these vast territories. Each legion was a powerful military unit, consisting of up to 5,000 soldiers, and their presence was essential for enforcing Roman order. Britain, where the Ninth Legion was last known to be, had been a challenging province. The Romans had invaded in 43 CE, but strong resistance remained, especially in the rugged north. Forts were constructed to maintain control, and roads were built to allow quick movement of troops. The Ninth had been part of this mission, likely stationed in Eboracum, modern-day York. By the early 2nd century, Rome was preparing to construct Hadrian's Wall to protect the province from northern tribes. The exact timing of this aligns closely with the disappearance of the Ninth Legion, adding to the theory that they may have been involved in heavy fighting during this period. There are several possibilities that attempt to explain what happened to the Ninth Legion. One of the most widely accepted theories is that the Legion was destroyed in battle while fighting native tribes in northern Britain. Some historians suggest they may have been ambushed in a major uprising, which could explain the lack of Roman documentation. Perhaps the loss was too great or shameful to record openly. Another possibility is that the legion was transferred out of Britain to another part of the empire and met its end elsewhere. Some inscriptions hint that parts of the Ninth may have been sent to the Netherlands or even to the east, where other legions were engaged in conflict. However, there is no definitive proof that the Ninth continued to exist outside of Britain. A third theory suggests the legion may have been quietly disbanded or merged with other units. This was not uncommon, especially if the numbers had been reduced over time. In such cases, records could have become muddled or incomplete, leading to their historical disappearance. Some even speculate that survivors of the legion settled in distant lands, although this idea is more romantic than supported by evidence. The truth remains elusive, hidden beneath layers of time and uncertainty. Modern archaeology and historical research continue to shed light on the mystery of the Ninth Legion. Excavations at Roman forts in York, Scotland, and Germany have turned up artifacts bearing the Ninth's insignia, suggesting that parts of the Legion were active in various locations. However, none of this evidence offers a final answer about their fate. Many scholars today lean toward the idea that the Legion was lost in battle in Britain, possibly in a major conflict that predated the construction of Hadrian's Wall. Tree-ring data and settlement patterns suggest increasing unrest during this time, which may have triggered large-scale tribal resistance. Recent studies also suggest that Roman record-keeping, while extensive, was not always complete, especially for units that met unusual or disgraceful ends. This makes it plausible that the Ninth was simply lost and quietly erased from official memory. While we may never know with certainty what became of the Ninth Legion, their disappearance serves as a powerful reminder of how even the mightiest forces in history can vanish into mystery, leaving behind only ruins, rumors, and questions that continue to inspire exploration. In the vast and often harsh deserts of western China, particularly in the Tarim Basin of the Xinjiang Uyghur Autonomous Region, archaeologists have uncovered something truly astonishing: mummies. But these aren't the type of mummies most people think of, like the embalmed pharaohs of Egypt. These are naturally preserved human remains, some over 4,000 years old, remarkably well kept by the dry desert climate. What makes them so intriguing, and the reason they have sparked a global mystery, is that many of these mummies have distinctly European features. They have long noses, deep-set eyes, and in some cases, light-colored hair that is still visible after thousands of years. These remains, known collectively as the Tarim Mummies, include men, women, and children who were buried in boat-shaped coffins, wrapped in woolen textiles, and adorned with felt hats, leather boots, and woven blankets. Their clothing and burial styles appear completely foreign to the traditional Chinese customs of the time. One of the most famous of these mummies is known as the Beauty of Lulan, a woman who lived around 1800 BCE. Her face is delicate, her eyelashes still visible, and her features seem more European than Asian. The first of these unusual mummies was discovered in the early 20th century by European explorers such as Sven Hedin and Aurel Stein. But it wasn't until the 1980s, when Chinese archaeologists began to uncover entire cemeteries filled with similarly preserved bodies, that the mystery truly took shape. These cemeteries, like the Shaohe and Korigel burial sites, revealed a society with advanced textile-making skills, unique burial rituals, and tools made from both stone and bronze. What confused and fascinated researchers was how people with European-looking features ended up in such a remote part of East Asia thousands of years ago. Were they travelers, traders, or settlers? And how did they survive and thrive in such a harsh desert landscape? Their appearance challenges traditional narratives about ancient migration and cultural development in Asia. Adding to the mystery are the objects buried with them. Alongside the mummies, archaeologists have found well-crafted wooden tools, baskets, grains, and food remains, suggesting a settled and resourceful community. Some graves include carved wooden phallic symbols, which may have had fertility or religious significance. The coffins themselves, shaped like overturned boats, and the poles planted above them, seem to point to a symbolic journey in the afterlife. Despite their European features, the people buried in these cemeteries appear to have lived in this region for many generations. This challenges assumptions about where different groups of people lived and when. It also opens up questions about trade, language, and cultural exchange across continents long before the Silk Road was officially established. The Tarim mummies have captivated not only scientists but also the public imagination. They raise questions about ancient identity and how human migration shaped the early world. As more remains are discovered and studied, the picture becomes more detailed, but also more complex. Who were these people? Where did they come from? And how do they fit into the larger story of human history? To understand the significance of the Tarim mummies, we need to consider the historical backdrop of the Tarim Basin region. The Tarim Basin is a large, arid area surrounded by mountains, the Tian Shan to the north and the Kunlun to the south. It was once home to small rivers and oases, making settlement possible despite the desert environment. Today, it lies in western China, but thousands of years ago, it was a crossroads for movement between east and west. The time periods in which these mummies lived, roughly between 2000 BCE and 200 CE, were dynamic eras of human movement and cultural development. While the Chinese heartland was developing along the Yellow River, forming early dynasties, other cultures were evolving in Central Asia, Europe, and the Indian subcontinent. Although the Silk Road would not formally emerge until around 130 BCE, the region already served as a natural corridor for people, goods, and ideas. The Tarim Basin's position made it a natural meeting point for East and West. Over time, various nomadic groups passed through or settled in the region. These included Indo-European-speaking peoples, such as the Tocharians, who are believed to be among the earliest known inhabitants of the area and may be linked to the Tarim mummies. Their language, known from ancient manuscripts, shows similarities with early European tongues, further deepening the mystery. Culturally, the Tarim Basin people exhibited a blend of influences. Their clothing shows advanced textile-making techniques similar to those found in Bronze Age Europe. Their burial customs, using wooden coffins, felt clothing, and boat shapes, differed from Chinese practices of the same time. These distinctions suggest that while they lived in what is now China, their origins and traditions were rooted elsewhere. By the time Chinese historians began writing about the region, it was already a diverse area with various cultures and languages. Early Chinese texts mention the western regions as home to many different peoples, often describing them as foreign or barbarian. This reinforces the idea that the Tarim Basin was not fully integrated into Chinese civilization until much later. There are several leading theories about the origins and identity of the Tarim mummies. One possibility is that they were part of a broader migration of Indo-European peoples from the western Eurasian steppes into Central Asia. Some historians suggest they belonged to an ancient group called the Tocharians, whose language is known from texts found in the region and who are believed to have spoken an early branch of the Indo-European language family. Genetic testing has added more evidence to this idea. DNA analyses show that the mummies have genetic markers shared with populations from Europe and Central Asia. This supports the notion that their ancestors may have come from areas west of the Caspian Sea, migrating eastward in search of new land or trade opportunities. Another theory is that the Tarim Basin served as a melting pot for various peoples, not just Indo-Europeans. Some scholars believe the region was inhabited by a mix of cultural groups who came together through trade, travel, or climate-driven migration. This could explain the combination of European features and local burial practices. One more possibility is that these people were not travelers or temporary visitors, but long-term settlers who had adapted to the harsh desert conditions. Their advanced textiles, tools, and burial customs suggest a well-developed culture that lasted for generations. The uniqueness of their appearance might simply reflect ancient diversity that modern political borders often obscure. There's also a theory involving climate. Some researchers propose that changing environmental conditions pushed groups eastward into more habitable areas. The Tarim Basin, with its oases and rivers, may have provided a lifeline to such migrating communities. Though these theories differ, they all share a common theme. The Tarim mummies represent early human movement across vast distances. Whether as traders, migrants, or settlers, they show that ancient people were far more mobile and connected than we once believed. In recent years, modern science has greatly expanded our understanding of the Tarim mummies, though many mysteries remain. Advanced DNA testing has confirmed that the mummies had genetic ties to populations in Europe and Central Asia. Surprisingly, a 2021 study revealed that the oldest of the mummies were not migrants, but rather a genetically isolated group that had lived in the region for thousands of years. This finding challenges the earlier belief that they were recent arrivals from the West. The same study also suggested that the Tarim Basin people developed their culture locally, despite their unusual appearance. Their features may have been preserved through long-term isolation, without significant mixing with surrounding groups. This would explain why they look so different from modern populations in the area. Digital imaging and analysis have also helped researchers better understand the textiles and tools found with the mummies. Some of the fabrics show complex weaving techniques not seen elsewhere at the time, indicating a high level of craftsmanship. These findings suggest that the Tarim Basin was not just a place of survival, but a center of innovation and culture. Despite political sensitivities in the region, Chinese and international scientists continue to collaborate on studying the mummies. Museums and universities have created 3D reconstructions and virtual tours to share the discoveries with a broader audience. Public interest remains high, not only because of the mummy's strange appearance but also because they offer a window into a lost world. As our understanding grows, the story of the Tarim mummies is shifting. They are no longer seen simply as outsiders who wandered into China, but as a unique and enduring culture that thrived in one of the world's most challenging environments. Their legacy reminds us that human history is full of surprises, and that the ancient world was far more connected than we ever imagined. In the heart of Central America, surrounded by thick jungles, lie the remnants of a civilization that once flourished with brilliance and complexity, the ancient Maya. They built enormous stone cities, towering pyramids, advanced observatories, and intricate palaces without metal tools or the wheel. They mapped the stars with extraordinary precision, developed a unique writing system of glyphs, and built a calendar so accurate it amazed future scholars. The Maya were master builders, mathematicians, astronomers, and farmers. Their cities, such as Tikal, Palenque, and Copan, were not only large and beautiful but also deeply spiritual centers, connected to their gods, rituals, and rulers. Yet despite all this achievement, sometime around 800 to 900 CE, something strange began to happen. City after city in the southern lowlands, where many of the Maya's greatest cities were located, started to decline. Monument construction stopped. Inscriptions that once celebrated kings and battles ceased. Buildings fell into disrepair. Populations declined dramatically, and eventually, many cities were abandoned. The question remains, why? This mystery is not about a complete vanishing. Maya people still live in Central America today, and their languages, customs, and traditions have continued. But the sudden end of what is known as the classic period of Maya civilization, marked by the collapse of many major cities, has long puzzled historians, archaeologists, and curious minds alike. Early European explorers who came upon the jungle-covered ruins in the 19th century were astounded. The massive structures seemed out of place in the middle of the forest. Some even wondered if another unknown civilization had built them. But over time, it became clear these were the creations of the Maya, whose history stretches back thousands of years. The question became even more compelling. What could cause such an advanced and powerful culture to allow its cities to fall silent? Unlike many historical collapses, there is no single, obvious cause. There is no record of conquest from a foreign empire, no universal disease that swept through the cities, and no definitive evidence of a single catastrophic natural event that destroyed them. The collapse appears gradual, uneven, and complex. What makes it even more mysterious is that not all Maya cities declined at the same time or in the same way. In the northern regions, like the Yucatan Peninsula, cities such as Chichen Itza continued to thrive for centuries after the southern lowland cities were abandoned. This regional difference suggests that the collapse was not a sudden, civilization-wide event, but rather a gradual unraveling influenced by many factors. The abandonment of these great cities did not mean the disappearance of the Maya people. Rural areas continued to be inhabited, and smaller towns survived. But the loss of political structure, city populations, and artistic output left behind a haunting silence in once bustling ceremonial centers. The jungle began to reclaim temples, plazas, and pyramids. Birds, vines, and moss covered what had once been vibrant symbols of human life. The mystery of the Maya collapse is a story that continues to unfold. With every excavation and discovery, pieces of the puzzle are added. Yet the full picture remains elusive. The calm, slow retreat of this remarkable civilization's urban life invites us to reflect not just on what was lost, but on what still endures, and what we can learn about the challenges of sustaining complex societies in changing environments. The Maya civilization began as early as 2000 BCE with the rise of agricultural villages and gradually developed into one of the most remarkable ancient cultures in the Americas. The height of Maya civilization is known as the Classic Period, which lasted from approximately 250 CE to 900 CE. During this time, the Maya built dozens of cities across what is now southern Mexico, Guatemala, Belize, and parts of Honduras and El Salvador. These cities were more than just places to live. They were centers of religion, governance, trade, and art. Each major city-state had its own ruler, who was often viewed as a divine figure. The Maya practiced a complex religion involving numerous gods connected to nature, the sun, rain, and agriculture. Their ceremonies included offerings, dances, and sometimes human sacrifices to maintain cosmic balance. The Maya writing system used symbols called glyphs, which recorded events, rulers, battles, and dates. They also developed a base 20 number system and understood the concept of zero long before many other civilizations. Their calendar systems, including the famous long count, allowed them to track time with astonishing accuracy. Despite being politically fragmented, Maya cities were connected through trade, alliances, and sometimes war. Goods like jade, obsidian, cacao, textiles, and feathers moved through a vast network of roads and rivers. Farmers supported the urban populations by growing maize, beans, squash, and other crops in the surrounding countryside. But by the 9th century CE, many of these urban centers began to show signs of stress. Inscriptions stopped, monuments were left unfinished, and ceremonial centers were abandoned. While some regions, particularly in the northern Yucatan, remained active, the loss of the great southern lowland cities marked a major turning point in Maya history. This period of decline is still studied today for its insights into how civilizations rise, flourish, and change. Scholars have proposed many theories to explain the Maya collapse, and most now agree that it was not caused by a single event. Instead, it was likely the result of multiple factors interacting over time. One possibility is environmental degradation. The growth of large cities may have led to deforestation and soil depletion. With trees cut down for construction and firewood, and the land overfarmed, the environment may have become less capable of supporting large populations. Closely related is the theory of climate change. Some historians suggest that the region experienced prolonged droughts during the time of the collapse. Drought would have greatly affected agriculture, leading to food shortages and famine. Without water for crops and daily life, people may have been forced to leave the cities. Overpopulation may have also played a role. As cities expanded, the demand for resources may have outpaced what the environment could provide. This could have led to increased competition and tension among cities and social groups. Warfare is another important factor. There is evidence that conflicts between city-states became more frequent and intense during the late Classic period. One possibility is that these wars weakened the political structure, disrupted trade, and created instability that made it hard for cities to recover from other challenges. Some historians suggest that political and religious crises contributed as well. The Maya believed their rulers had divine power and could communicate with the gods. When droughts came or crops failed, people may have lost faith in their leaders. This could have led to internal revolts, the overthrow of ruling families, or the abandonment of religious centers. It's also possible that migration played a role. Faced with food shortages and instability, many Maya may have chosen to move to more favorable areas, especially toward the north, where cities like Chichen Itza continued to grow after others declined. In truth, the collapse was probably the result of a combination of these elements. Environmental stress, social change, warfare, and climate challenges may have come together in a way that made it impossible for the southern lowland cities to survive in their traditional form. Thanks to modern research tools, we now understand much more about the Maya collapse than ever before. One of the most important advances is the use of LiDAR, light detection, and ranging. This laser-based technology can scan beneath the jungle canopy, revealing long-lost structures, roads, and agricultural terraces. LiDAR has shown that Maya cities were larger and more interconnected than previously believed. In addition, climate science has provided valuable clues. By studying ancient lake sediments, cave formations, and tree rings, scientists have identified periods of extended drought in the Maya region. These findings support the theory that environmental change, especially the lack of rainfall, was a major stressor for Maya agriculture and urban life. Archaeologists have also found evidence of intensified warfare in the late Classic period, including defensive walls and signs of burned buildings. This supports the idea that conflict may have escalated as cities competed for shrinking resources. Importantly, modern research has shifted away from the idea of a sudden, mysterious collapse. Instead, scholars now speak of a transition, a gradual shift in population, power, and culture. Many Maya people moved away from the large ceremonial cities but continued to live in smaller communities. Over time, new centers emerged in the north, where Maya civilization adapted and evolved. Today, millions of Maya descendants live in Mexico, Guatemala, Belize, and Honduras. They continue to speak Maya languages, follow traditional customs, and honor their heritage. Efforts are underway to preserve and revitalize Maya culture and to teach future generations about their history. The story of the Maya collapse is not just a tale of decline. It's a story of resilience and transformation. The ancient Maya faced great challenges but adapted in ways that allowed their culture to endure. For us today, their experience serves as a powerful reminder of how climate, environment, and society are deeply connected, and how the past can guide us toward better understanding of the future. In the vast, arid lands of the American Southwest, towering cliffs and dramatic mesas guard a story that has puzzled researchers and archaeologists for generations. The story concerns the Anasazi, an ancient Native American culture that flourished for centuries in the Four Corners region, where present-day Utah, Colorado, Arizona, and New Mexico meet. Known for their architectural genius, the Anasazi built remarkable cliff dwellings like those at Mesa Verde and Chaco Canyon. These structures were crafted with such precision and care that they have survived centuries of weather and erosion. Yet, despite this cultural sophistication, the Anasazi vanished from these lands by the late 13th century, leaving behind empty villages, abandoned kivas, and a mystery that continues to stir curiosity. When archaeologists first began studying these ancient dwellings in the 19th and early 20th centuries, they were struck by the suddenness of the Anasazi's disappearance. The settlements were left intact, pottery was left behind, and some sites even showed signs of being hastily vacated. What could have driven an entire civilization to abandon their homes and disappear into history? This question has led to countless investigations, each turning up clues but never a definitive answer. Unlike the fall of empires due to conquest or disease, the Anasazi left few indications of what caused their decline. Their legacy lies in stone dwellings and artifacts, but their voices and stories were seemingly lost to time. This mystery deepens when one considers the complexity of the Anasazi way of life. They were not primitive wanderers, they had well-established agricultural systems, intricate trade routes, and spiritual practices deeply embedded in their culture. Corn, beans, and squash were cultivated in dry conditions using advanced irrigation techniques. Petroglyphs and pictographs found on canyon walls reveal a symbolic language of ceremony and tradition. The precision with which they constructed their homes, often high in cliff alcoves for protection, demonstrates a mastery of engineering and communal cooperation. It is these achievements that make their disappearance so perplexing. Why would such a successful society collapse? The abandonment was not limited to one or two settlements, it was widespread. Entire regions were left empty, and within a relatively short span of time. While neighboring cultures continued to evolve and grow, the Anasazi presence evaporated from the archaeological record. There is evidence of stress, rooms hastily vacated, signs of violence in some places, and climatic changes suggested by tree-ring data. Still, the pieces do not fit neatly together. Today, the descendants of the Anasazi, modern-day Pueblo peoples, maintain oral traditions that speak of migrations and spiritual transformations. While these stories provide some insights, they also preserve the sacred nature of the Anasazi's departure, shielding aspects of their history from scientific probing. This dual lens, scientific inquiry and indigenous memory, adds richness and complexity to the mystery. The Anasazi civilization, often referred to by scholars today as the ancestral Puebloans, emerged around 1500 BCE and thrived until approximately 1300 CE. Their most notable period of growth and architectural achievement occurred between 900 and 1150 CE. During this time, large ceremonial complexes and multi-storied dwellings were constructed across the Four Corners region, a semi-arid area with high desert mesas, deep canyons, and limited water sources. The Anasazi's ability to adapt to this environment was remarkable. They developed methods to store rainwater, created small dams, and cultivated crops in carefully selected fields. Communities were connected by vast networks of roads and trails, and artifacts show that trade reached as far as Central America and the Pacific coast. Pottery, turquoise, and macaw feathers have all been found in Anasazi sites, suggesting a wide cultural reach. Chaco Canyon, one of the most significant Anasazi centers, functioned as both a ceremonial and economic hub. Great houses with hundreds of rooms, large kivas for religious gatherings, and complex astronomical alignments all pointed to a highly organized society. Mesa Verde in Colorado also demonstrates this sophistication, with its cliff dwellings providing protection and efficiency. Social life was communal, with extended families living together and sharing resources. Religion played a central role, and many buildings were aligned with celestial events, indicating a deep understanding of astronomy. This blend of practicality and spirituality formed the core of Anasazi identity. Despite these strengths, the environment posed continual challenges. The region's limited rainfall and frequent droughts meant that agricultural success was never guaranteed. This delicate balance between human activity and nature may have set the stage for eventual stress. Many scholars have tried to explain the disappearance of the Anasazi, and while no single theory has been universally accepted, several possibilities stand out. One of the most commonly cited explanations is prolonged drought. Treeing studies have identified a period of severe drought in the late 13th century, which would have devastated crops and water supplies. In a region already reliant on marginal agricultural lands, such a drought could have made survival nearly impossible. Another theory involves social unrest and conflict. Some archaeological sites show evidence of violence, burned structures, hastily buried bodies, and signs of fortification suggest that communities may have experienced internal strife or attacks from outside groups. This could have led to a breakdown in social cohesion and a decision to abandon traditional homes. A third possibility is resource depletion. Overfarming, deforestation, and overpopulation might have strained the fragile ecosystem, making long-term habitation unsustainable. As the land failed to support growing populations, people may have been forced to migrate in search of better conditions. Some historians suggest that the Anasazi departure was not so much a collapse as a transformation. According to this view, the people did not vanish but relocated and integrated with other native groups, evolving into the modern Pueblo tribes. This is supported by similarities in language, culture, and tradition between the Anasazi and present-day Hopi, Zuni, and other Pueblo peoples. There is also a spiritual dimension to consider. Oral histories passed down by Pueblo descendants speak of guided migrations and changes in spiritual purpose. From this perspective, the movement away from ancient settlements was part of a larger, divinely inspired journey. Ultimately, it may be that the Anasazi disappearance was the result of multiple factors, a combination of environmental, social, and spiritual elements that converged to reshape their society. Today, archaeologists and historians continue to study Anasazi sites with advanced tools and greater cultural sensitivity. Technologies like LiDAR, light detection and ranging, and ground-penetrating radar allow researchers to examine ancient structures without excavation, revealing new details about how these communities were built and organized. Recent studies have shown that climate patterns in the 13th century included decades-long droughts, confirming that environmental stress likely played a major role in the Anasazi's decision to leave their settlements. Pollen analysis and soil sampling also indicate changes in vegetation and agricultural productivity, painting a clearer picture of the challenges faced by these communities. Moreover, there is growing recognition of the importance of indigenous perspectives in understanding the past. Pueblo elders and cultural leaders offer insights that complement archaeological data. These oral histories often speak of sacred migrations, communal decision-making, and the importance of harmony with nature. When considered alongside scientific findings, they provide a more holistic view of the Anasazi's departure. Museums and educational programs are also shifting how they present Anasazi history. Rather than framing it as a mystery of disappearance, there is an emphasis on continuity, the idea that the Anasazi became the Pueblo peoples and that their culture did not vanish but transformed and endured. This approach respects the living descendants and honors their connection to the land. In recent years, collaborative projects between archaeologists and native communities have deepened mutual respect and understanding. Sites like Mesa Verde and Chaco Canyon are not only historical landmarks but also sacred places still visited by indigenous people today. These connections remind us that the story of the Anasazi is ongoing. In the end, the mystery of the Anasazi is not just about what was lost, but also about what remains: stone walls standing against time, stories carried through generations, and a legacy of resilience that continues to inspire.